conclusions here, or that this was
all right,
triggered
Evan, I'm sorry to
using...
interrupt you. We got to go straight to St. Cloud, Minnesota. That press conference underway again. An off-duty police officer shooting dead someone who stabbed 8 people in that mall last night. Let's listen in.
Evening, it actually it reminds me of, or it's something that I hear very often. In the 11 years that I've been mayor, I think I get asked this question often: what keeps you up at night? Well, with what happened last night is what keeps me up at night. It was certainly a tragic situation that happened at Crossroads Mall, but I want to, first of all, thank the law enforcement response, not only our St. Cloud PD, but the departments from throughout the area, the Sheriff's Office, our firefighters, emergency management folks, ambulance, all of the response teams of our first responders were exemplary in how quickly they were there and responded to the events that took place last night. And I'd also like to thank the response that Crossroads, the management at Crossroads, the staff, the folks in Target and at Macy's, a number of folks that were also extremely helpful in their response last night. Our thoughts and our prayers continue to be with the victims, the individuals that were attacked last night. I want to just give you an update from the previous press conference we held last night. Since that night, there have been some changes. We had an additional individual who self-admitted in Long Prairie Hospital. So there were 9 victims. 9 victims, and as of 7 o'clock this morning, there were 3 that were still in the hospital. No one with any type of life-threatening injuries, but there are 3 of the 9 that remain in the hospital. The other individuals have been released. Those victims, I'll give you an indication without the names, but Rain, I'll give you, there's male 22-year-old from Big Lake, male 24-year-old from Wilmer, male 53-year-old from Albany, male 45-year-old from St. Cloud, male 20-year-old from St. Cloud, female 15-year-old from Big Lake, female 50-year-old from Kimball, male 29-year-old from St. Cloud, and a male 31-year-old from Avon. Our thoughts and prayers are with these victims, but also all of the other individuals in the mall on a Saturday night. As you can imagine, on a weekend, the amount of people in the mall, I can't help but think of the families and the children that witnessed a horrific action. But I also want to recognize the individual off-duty police officer who eliminated the threat and took down the suspect. That officer is from the Avon Police Department, Jason Faulkner. Jason Faulkner is a part-time police officer for Avon. He is the former chief of police of Albany. He was in the mall, and as somebody who has had an opportunity to witness the surveillance tape in Macy's and witnessed what he did, he clearly prevented additional injuries and potentially loss of life. His heroic actions are exemplary, having witnessed what he did as the suspect was lunging at him with the knife. Not only did he fire, the suspect went down, he came back up on 3 different occasions. He, again, protected others from being injured and potentially loss of life. Clearly, a hero. Officer Faulkner was there at the right time, at the right place. The mall, Crossroads Shopping Center, will be the crime scene has now. The police have left. It will remain closed today. Crossroads is expected to open for business as usual tomorrow, but it'll be closed today. I want to again thank the responders. I also want to thank, in a situation like this, you really understand what your community is made of. The strong support that I have heard and received in phone calls, in emails, texts, through social media, not only from our community but from all over the world. The outpouring of support in this community. We're a strong community. We're a united community. And there is, in this individual, evil act, unjustifiable in any means, will not shake the resolve of this community. We have had tremendous outpouring, not only, as I mentioned, from throughout the world, but within our community. That support is very strong and clearly is evident in this community, the strength of this community. I'm going to have come up now to the podium Chief of Police for the City of St. Cloud, Blair Anderson, and as he comes up, again, I can't say enough for the first responders in our community and beyond just the City of St. Cloud, who clearly are a great example of their profession and are extremely worthy of our admiration and respect. Chief Anderson.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. I want to reiterate the mayor's sentiment. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all the victims and their families, and we certainly want to acknowledge all of our partners, our neighboring partners, our federal and state partners. At a time like this, you need your colleagues and your partners, and they were there for us, and they still are. I can tell you, before I go back through the chronology, that from the first 911 call till the subject was eliminated was approximately 5 minutes. And that's what we expect when something like this starts. We train to respond to these kinds of incidents swiftly, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. But for that swift response, particularly the actions of Officer Faulkner, I agree with the mayor that this could have been much, much worse. And no one being injured obviously is acceptable, but this could have been a lot worse but for the swift response, not only from the men and women of St. Cloud Police Department, but all of our neighbors as well. And so I'll go over the chronology with you again in case some of you weren't available last evening. At approximately 8 or 8:15 last night, one individual entered the southeast side of the Crossroads Mall on Division Street and attacked 9 people. We now know there were 9 victims, as the mayor said, one self-transported to a hospital outside of our jurisdiction. Stabbed 9 people, was confronted by Officer Faulkner, and I had the opportunity to view the video with the mayor, and I couldn't agree more with his take on it. This is what we're trained to do. Unfortunately, none of us ever want to have to do that, but that's what we're here for. Our job is the public safety of all. And Officer Faulkner's actions, again, were swift and direct and in my opinion, appropriate. I don't think I have anything more to add other than between last night, obviously, and this morning, we've executed at least 2 search warrants at an address here in St. Cloud. We did discover the suspect's vehicle in the mall parking lot. That vehicle was cleared and impounded. In other words, there's no imminent threat either from that vehicle or right now. There's nothing that we have gleaned that would suggest to us that this is anything other than what it appears to be now. Now, keep in mind, and let me emphasize, at this time, there's nothing to suggest anything differently than what you've been told, all right? But there are a lot of moving parts, And this is a fluid situation, and I can assure you we will be transparent with you on any developments, so long as they don't compromise our investigation. I'm going to turn it over to Special Agent in Charge, Rick Thornton. He is the SAC from the Minneapolis Office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Good afternoon. As Chief Anderson said, my name is Rick Thornton. I'm a Special Agent in Charge for the FBI in Minnesota. I want to echo what the Chief said in terms of this is a very fluid situation and will continue to evolve. The FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force has been working side by side with the St. Cloud Police Department and other partners since last night, throughout the night and today. We are currently investigating this as a potential act of terrorism. And I do say potential. There's a lot we don't know. We do not at this point in time know whether the subject was in contact with, had connections with, was inspired by a foreign terrorist organization. That's what the investigation is attempting to ascertain at this point in time. That will involve all the things that you would expect. We'll look at his social media, we'll look at his electronic devices, we'll talk to associates. We will try to sort of peel back the onion and figure out what motivated this individual to commit the horrific act that he did last night. I also want to remiss in not echoing the mayor and the chief's sentiment of thoughts and prayers out to the 9 individuals that were victimized and the other people that had to experience the trauma, even if they weren't physically injured. That's our role at this point in time, along with the St. Cloud PD, is to figure out what happened and to ultimately, hopefully, establish what the motivation was. Thank you very much.
We'll take a few questions, you all, and I will. We'll take a few questions, you all, and I will defer some of those to the lead investigator on this case, Lieutenant Lori Ellering. So feel free if you have to defer to.
All right, sorry, but we lost that signal out of St. Cloud, Minnesota. But you heard there the press conference unfolding, describing that there are now 9 victims, stabbing victims, when this man, who they are not yet ready to reveal the identity of, simply walked into a shopping mall in St. Cloud, about 80 miles outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and started stabbing people. 9 victims in all, 2 women ages 15 and 50, 7 men ranging in ages of 20 and 53. There was no elaboration from authorities there as to the security, private security firm uniform that was earlier reported that this stabber was wearing, but we do know that investigators have said that they have now found the vehicle that was parked in that shopping mall. They have looked through it, and of course they have search warrants for at least 1 address. Let's talk more about this with my returning panel. Evan Perez is joining us out of Washington, D.C. Art Roderick, Matthew Horace, Shimon Prokopets, and Paul Kirkshank, all with me now. All right, let's talk about what we heard and what we didn't hear here. So Matthew, we heard from investigators there that it's quite clear this off-duty police officer really prevented or saved the lives of many by unloading on this stabber. He just indiscriminately walked around and stabbed 9 people. What more needs to be determined in this investigation in order to figure out the motivation behind this assailant?
Well, I think the chief mentioned that they had done a couple of search warrants, and there may be many more to come. They're going to be checking social media, trying to determine what the suspect was communicating, who he was communicating to, who he was communicating with, and what they were planning. In the most recent cases, we've always gone back and reviewed cell phone records, Twitter, other social media, and it seems like they usually leave a path on social media. So that'll be the first thing that they're focused on today.
Yeah, no further comment, Paul Kirkshank, on ISIS claiming that this man was a soldier of the Islamic State. Obviously, investigators are going to look further into that, but how will they be able to determine whether he was a lone wolf, so to speak, whether indeed he was trained, directed by ISIS, why ISIS would want to take credit for this?
Well, they're going to first of all look at is he radicalized? Has he got a network of radical contacts? We've already heard about that. They'll be going through all the social media history of this individual. But the ISIS affiliated news agency Amaq, just in the past few hours, claiming that he was a soldier of the Islamic State, answering their call for followers in the West to launch attacks. And just recently, one of their top commanders instructed followers to stay home rather than travel to Syria and Iraq, stay home to launch attacks. But ISIS offering no proof that he was following their orders. They may be just opportunistic here, seizing on early media reports that he's supposed to have said Allah, that he perhaps asked the religion, whether they were Muslim, some of his victims, or it might be that they do have some information that he reached out to them before, giving them some confidence to claim that he was inspired by them. But ISIS are not saying that he was recruited in Syria and Iraq and sent back. We've got to make that distinction very, very clear. They're just saying that he was inspired by their cause.
Okay. And Art, what are you hearing in this press conference that elicits more information for you as to whether indeed, oh, it looks like we're going to take you right back to St. Cloud there, because they're now taking some questions. So let's listen into what's being said here.
Prevented additional injuries and potentially loss of life through his heroic action.
Can you describe what you see in that video?
In that video, what I've seen in that video, as the suspect is entering with carrying a knife into Macy's, and that's where the video that I had an opportunity to see last night. Clearly, he has a knife in hand. He can certainly see the officer, Officer Faulkner, when he came in. Clearly, and from what witnesses, you can't hear the audio on the video, but what I've heard from witnesses, he identified himself as a police officer and asked him to. You actually see him going down by command, and then immediately lunging towards the officer. And this is something, as somebody, I'm a layperson to law enforcement, but in witnessing what may have been 20 feet or beyond, covered in less than 2 seconds with a knife. So you saw him lunge at the police officer. The officer then fired a few rounds. You see him fall, and then you see him get back up. Again, fired upon, you see him fall, you see him get back up 3 times. And then even after that, to the point where he still was attempting to get back up again within the officer, the fatal blow. And then you also see our officers, St. Cloud PD, entering the scene at that moment.
Can you describe the knife? Was it a large knife, a small knife, or definitely a knife?
It's definitely a knife.
Kitchen knife?
I would from the vantage point would certainly something that would be more of a kitchen type knife or that type of knife. Certainly the type of knife that created injuries on 9 individuals. So it didn't really matter what the size of it. Was a knife that was dangerous and caused a significant amount of injury to a lot of people.
How much distance was it at the end of, ballpark on the distance? Did he get close enough to his person to...
I'm watching a video, so what I see is what I can look at is looks like 20 feet from the first lunge, and then each one getting closer, even to the point where close enough that the officer actually was almost to the point where falling backwards. He was that close. If not, there's clearly the officer's life was clearly in danger, and he made it. To me, in watching it, it looks like a training video for law enforcement, what law enforcement should do. Clearly, he made a decision, and if not for him being there, clearly this would have been much worse than it was.
And Officer Faulkner, he has a background in teaching tactical...
My understanding, he does. Yeah.
A couple more questions, folks, and then at the conclusion of this briefing, we will continue to disseminate information the old-fashioned way via our media releases. And so if there's a need for us to convene you again, we will give you ample time to get here. So,
was the officer injured in any way?
not to my knowledge.
Does the
Yes.
video show that he was carrying a bag that's not contained inside, or is he carrying it inside the mall?
The video shows exactly what the mayor said. He's wielding a knife, and he closed the distance on that officer in the blink of an eye.
Chief, can you talk at all about the suspect, how long he may have been living in our community, or have you had contact with him in the past, or was he on your radar at all?
We have had minor contact. I believe we have 3 in-house contacts with this individual, nothing more serious than traffic violations thus far. How long this individual has lived in St. Cloud, I don't know that yet.
Anything with the FBI? Any watch lists or anything he had ever been?
I will defer that to the FBI.
So at this early stage in the investigation, I'm not going to comment on that. Part of our process, again, is searching, the entire repository of databases on what we know about somebody, to include immigration records if they're applicable, to include, as you mentioned, terrorism watch records, our own internal databases, criminal databases, and so forth. That's an ongoing process. It just takes a little time to, to kind of put together a definitive package on that. So I don't want to comment prematurely.
Another question about kind of the potential terrorism aspect that you're looking at. What initially makes you look at this and go, we're looking at the potential of it being terrorist?
Well, first of all, there's a certain amount of irony given what else happened yesterday. Again, we don't know that there's any nexus between these events, but that's a good start right there. One more question, you guys.
What was the age of the suspect?
Not releasing any information about the suspect right now.
Sorry,
We're deferring to the medical examiner on that.
Yesterday's comments about what the suspect may have said in relation to Allah and in relation to asking people if they were possibly Muslim. Can you clarify exactly what has been gleaned from witnesses and victims?
No, that's exactly it. That's all I know right now. I suspect I'll get another briefing after we are done here, but what I said yesterday is all I know for right now, that there was at least one victim who was asked if they were Muslim. And beyond that, I don't have any more information on that right now. So,
A guard at the mall, or was he posing as a guard?
to our knowledge, the suspect was not an employee of the mall. Suspect did have on a private security uniform, and again, we're in the process of figuring out if the suspect was actually an employee of a private security firm or a former employee or what. That's all I got, you guys, right now, unless the mayor wants to add something.
I just want to again reiterate the response, and I want to thank not only again the St. Cloud PD, the FBI, the BCA, the other law enforcement in our area, our St. Cloud Fire Department, the Gold Cross, the ambulance, the EMTs, and all the folks at Crossroads that came to a tremendously rapid response. Their efforts.
All right, once again, we just lost that signal there out of St. Cloud, Minnesota. But once again, we're not hearing a name, the identity of this now dead suspect, someone who stabbed 9 people in a shopping mall there in St. Cloud, Minnesota, just about 80 miles or so outside of Minneapolis. We also did hear a little bit more information from the heroism of the off-duty police officer who helped prevent any more serious injury of the people there. He was described by the police chief and the mayor there. He saw this suspect stabbing victims in the shopping mall. He identified himself as a police officer, and then that suspect then lunged at him, and the mayor described that 3 times, even after being shot by the off-duty police officer, that suspect lunged at him, tried to get back up, and that he was using, in the words of the mayor there, it appeared to be a kitchen knife. Let me bring back my panel now to talk more about what we just heard about all that transpired there in St. Cloud, Minnesota, what investigators are willing to share with us right now. Evan Perez in Washington, D.C., Art Roderick, Matthew Horace, Shimon Prokopets, and Paul Kirkshank. All right, welcome back to all of you. So, Art, let me go to you first, because the mayor said it seemed insignificant, perhaps not important about the specificity of the knife, but perhaps learning more about the knife, the weapon used here, might be able to tell a little bit more about the sequence of events leading up to this. What other kind of information will investigators try to learn about this suspect?
Well, I mean, where is he employed? Is he actually a security guard? I mean, as I had mentioned before, and I think Bob had mentioned earlier too, that this tactic, this stabbing tactic, was used over in the Middle East quite a bit and in Europe, where they couldn't get to a handgun or couldn't obtain weapons. So what do they go to? They go to a knife. Where did the knife come from? I think who has he associated with? Where are his family members? I think Matt had mentioned something about the social media aspect of it, which is very key as to determining if he's been in touch with over the internet, been looking at websites for inspiration, or what were his associates right there in St. Cloud, Minnesota? Is he from the area there? How long has he lived there? So they've got a lot of information to go on, and luckily enough, because of Officer Faulkner's actions, they can now go back and take their time at piecing this together, because you don't have an active threat here because of Officer Faulkner's heroic actions in this particular event.
This off-duty officer, Jason Faulkner, he's a part-time officer in nearby Avon there. He's a former police chief of the Albany Police Force. And you heard the mayor there say that he prevented loss of life. Pretty extraordinary instincts and his training really kicking in. The mayor even saying this really should be training video used here. So incredible policing on the part of this part-time police officer. What more are you hoping to, hear about the suspect? The motivation, what the inspiration, especially after ISIS claiming some responsibility that he's a soldier of ISIS.
Over the next several days, investigators are going to be working to validate or invalidate all of that information. I still think this was an incredible act of law enforcement bravery, and it, just like the chief said, exactly what we're trained to do. Engage that suspect. He saved lives by his quick and decisive action. Amazing.
Paul.
Yeah, I mean, and just imagine if this perpetrator had a gun. I mean, we could have been talking about an Orlando sort of size event. I mean, law enforcement have been very scared about exactly this kind of scenario. A shopping mall in middle America. I mean, that's an attack on the everyday life of a lot of people here in the United States. But it's not clear at this point the motivation, whether this guy was motivated somehow by some kind of Islamist ideology or some completely different ideology, or there's another set of explanations linked to mental health or so on. The authorities have really not revealed much at this point. But
right, the police chief only really touching on the earlier reports that this suspect asked if you were Christian or if you're Muslim to at least one of the victims, and even in the name of Allah, stabbing one of the victims.
Yeah, and we've seen that in terrorist attacks from the groups in Africa, in the Middle East before, where they've tried to single out non-Muslims and actually separated them out. So that remains to be seen if he was motivated by Islamist ideology. Certainly on the face of it, according to those eyewitness reports, you're kind of going in that sort of direction.
Okay.
I think from a law enforcement perspective, though, we really don't care what the motivation is. When things come down to that level of violence, we're going to take action, and we're going to do it swiftly, and that's exactly what you saw happen here today.
All right, so we're going to continue our conversation in a moment. We also want to talk about the commonalities or lack thereof, whether this is purely coincidence to be investigating an incident that unfolded there in Minneapolis, and now New York authorities, New Jersey authorities also investigating incidents. We're going to come right back, and we'll have a discussion about all of those things.